Have you ever noticed how drained you feel after giving your attention to the wrong things? It's not just the tiredness in your body, but the heaviness in your mind, as if your energy has been stolen piece by piece. Maybe it was an endless scroll that left you restless, or an argument you didn't even care about but couldn't resist. Maybe it was the small interruptions that piled up until the day slipped away. And then you wonder why your spirit feels worn thin. The Stoics understood something we often forget. Your energy is your life. It is not just fuel to get through the day. It is your clarity, your focus, your strength. Spend it carelessly and you scatter yourself. Guard it wisely and you begin to shape the kind of life you've always wanted. You cannot control everything that comes your way, but you can decide what deserves your attention. That choice alone can transform not just your day, but your entire direction. Because every distraction you refuse, every moment you reclaim, is a step back toward your mind, your time, and your power. This is not about perfection. It's about learning to stop the leaks, to protect what is sacred, and to live with intent. So take a breath, settle in, and let's walk through the disciplines that will help you hold your ground in a world that never stops pulling. 1. Energy is your greatest resource. Have you ever reached the end of a day and wondered why you feel so drained, even though you didn't do anything truly meaningful? You had hours in your hands, yet instead of feeling alive, you felt scattered, heavy, almost emptied of your own spirit. That exhaustion is not always from work, but from the silent ways we let our energy leak. The Stoics warned about this long before we had words like mental bandwidth or burnout. Marcus Aurelius wrote about guarding your mind from distraction, and Seneca reminded us that people will try to steal your time if you do not protect it. But behind both lessons lies a deeper truth. Your energy, your inner fire, is your most valuable possession. When it burns low, your clarity fades, your courage weakens, and your integrity bends. Think about how often you say yes when you want to say no. How often you scroll through endless feeds, not out of interest, but to avoid a moment of discomfort. How often you entertain voices in your life that bring guilt, noise, or unnecessary tension. Each of these is like making a withdrawal from a bank account you barely monitor. Unlike time, which moves on regardless, energy is not replenished automatically. You cannot wish it back. You earn it back through discipline, rest, and alignment with what truly matters. I once knew a man who inherited a beautiful old workshop from his grandfather. Inside were tools that had built furniture for generations. But he left the doors open, letting dust, water, and even strangers pass through. Over the years, the tools dulled, the wood rotted, and what was once a place of power became a ruin. He hadn't destroyed it. He had simply failed to guard it. Your energy is the same. Leave it open to every distraction, every demand, every false urgency, and one day you will find your inner tools dulled, your fire dimmed, and your will weakened. The Stoic path is not about guilt, but about honesty. To pause and ask yourself, where is my energy going? Who is taking it? What activities feed me, and what leaves me feeling hollow? These are not selfish questions, they are survival questions. Because a distracted person is never free, and a depleted person cannot lead. If you want to change your life, do not begin with a new schedule or a new app. Begin by tracking your energy. Notice the leaks. Guard it as fiercely as a warrior guards his blade, not out of paranoia, but because everything, your peace, your focus, your discipline, depends on its sharpness. Imagine living with the power of someone who knows exactly what deserves their energy and what doesn't. someone who can walk into chaos but not let it claim their mind. Someone who moves through the day, not just surviving but radiating quiet strength. That is the reward of learning to honor your energy. You owe no one your exhaustion. You owe yourself your full capacity. And once you begin to guard it with clarity, with love, and yes, with ruthlessness, you stop scattering yourself in every direction. You become steady, present, powerful, in a way that doesn't shout but resonates deeply. The kind of power that makes people pause, not because you demanded attention, but because you embody focus. So let this be your first discipline. Treat your energy as sacred. Protect it from the noise, from the unworthy, from the distractions that masquerade as obligations. Because when your energy is managed, your life takes shape. And when it is wasted, your days dissolve into dust. Now, if energy is your greatest resource, then the next question becomes clear. How do you truly know where it goes? And how can you separate what drains you from what restores you? That's where the next discipline begins. 2. Audit what drains and fuels you. Have you ever noticed how some mornings you wake up already tired, as if the night never gave you back what the day took away? You push through the hours, chasing motivation that never seems to arrive, and by evening you collapse into bed even more drained than when you began. Most people assume it's because of some big crisis, but often it isn't. The truth is simpler and more subtle. It's the little leaks that go unexamined, the constant background noise of tasks, conversations, and environments that slowly eat away at your spirit. The Stoics knew this well. Seneca advised, "Each night we should call ourselves to account, not to punish, but to see clearly where our energy has gone." For clarity is not found in trying harder, but in noticing what steals your strength and what restores it. I once heard the story of a craftsman who kept a small notebook by his bed. Every night, before sleep, he would write 2 lists. On one side, the moments that gave him energy, a quiet walk with his son, the scent of fresh wood shavings in his shop, a conversation with a friend who spoke truth without judgment. On the other side, the moments that drained him, a neighbor's constant complaints, an argument on the street, the clutter that always awaited him at home. At first, it felt trivial, almost childish. But over time, he saw patterns forming. The same names appeared, the same tasks weighed him down, the same habits clouded his mind. It became clear that it wasn't one great storm exhausting him, but 1,000 small leaks. That notebook, more than any new tool or technique, gave him mastery over his life. You see, when you start paying attention, you realize not all exhaustion comes from effort. Some of it comes from conversations you never should have entered, from obligations you accepted without thinking, from carrying roles that were never yours to bear. The clutter in your room, the toxic thread in your phone, the mental replay of words you wish you had spoken, all of it has a cost. And until you notice, you will keep paying it unconsciously. That is why the first step is not action, but awareness. Before you fix, you observe. Before you add, you subtract. You take inventory of what you have tolerated so long that it feels normal, even though it quietly bleeds you dry. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But the same is true for the patterns you allow to linger. If you let noise, negativity, and distraction fill your days, your spirit begins to take on their shade. Yet when you begin to notice what truly lightens you, a book that lifts your mind, a walk that clears your chest, a ritual that restores your rhythm, you start to draw your own map. These are not coincidences. They are signposts showing you where your energy is meant to flow. The courage comes in what follows. Because once you see the leaks, you cannot unsee them. You'll feel it every time you say yes to something hollow, a small ache, a tightening in the chest, a voice that whispers, "This is costing you." That discomfort is not weakness. It is awareness sharpening you. It is your soul reminding you that growth demands renewal, and renewal always demands release. Just because something has been with you for years does not mean it still deserves a place today. A friendship, a habit, a routine, even an environment. If it no longer fuels you, then holding on is not loyalty, but fear. So begin your audit, not with judgment, but with honesty. Who brings peace into your day, and who only brings noise? Which actions restore your clarity, and which steal it before you even begin? What do you truly need more of, and what do you continue to cling to, even though it hurts you? These are not small questions. They are the foundation of freedom. For a person who never pauses to examine will always live at the mercy of forces they cannot name, but the one who observes with courage begins to choose with wisdom. Protecting your energy does not start with new habits. It begins with better awareness. And once you have seen the truth of what drains and what fuels you, your life will never move unconsciously again. You will feel the cost of every misplaced yes, and you will begin to say no with conviction. And in that clarity, you recover the strength that was always yours, because this is your life, this is your energy, and no one else can manage it but you. And once you learn to see clearly, the next step is even harder but more powerful. The discipline of saying no, not with guilt, but with clarity. That is where we go next. 3. Say no to protect focus. How many times have you said yes when every fiber of you wanted to say no? Perhaps it was a favor you didn't have time for, a meeting you knew would drain you, a conversation you weren't ready to have, and yet you agreed, not because it served you, but because you feared judgment, discomfort, or rejection. In that moment, you weren't being generous, you were betraying yourself. Every yes that doesn't align with your values, your vision, or your capacity comes with a hidden cost. And that cost is your focus, the very currency of your life. The Stoics were clear on this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery in practice often looks like the courage to say no. Not with anger, not with apology, but with clarity. Because when you lack the discipline to refuse what doesn't align, your life quietly fills with the noise of other people's expectations. Your attention scatters, your purpose dilutes, and suddenly you are living not by choice, but by obligation. Focus is not about doing more, it is about aligning more deeply with what matters. Without the ability to say no, you can never go deep. Only wide, and wide without depth is emptiness. Think of a writer who dreams of finishing a book. Every morning he sets out to work, but the phone rings, a friend asks for help moving furniture, a colleague requests just a quick call, and a neighbor stops by for a chat. Each request is small, harmless on its own. But by the time the writer returns to his desk, his mind is scattered. The flow is gone. The hours are spent, not on the work that matters, but on fragments of everyone else's life. He is exhausted, not because the day was full of purpose, but because it was stolen by distraction disguised as duty. His story remains unwritten, not from lack of talent, but from lack of boundaries. This is the tragedy of an unchecked yes. The Stoic answer is not cruelty, but clarity. Your no is not rejection, it is redirection. It is not shutting people out, but staying loyal to what you were built to do. When you say no to what drains you, you create space for what sustains you. You reclaim the sacredness of your attention. And slowly, you begin to realize that the more you say yes to everyone, the less of you is left for anyone. Even those who love you get only the tired, distracted version of you. And that is not service. That is self-betrayal. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning not to be distracted by the demands of others, but to return to what he was called to do. The same is true for you, to guard the door of your mind like a disciplined gatekeeper, not out of fear, but out of deep responsibility. Because your yes is not just a word, it is a contract. It shifts your focus, your energy, your life. If you give it away cheaply, you will live cheaply. But if you honor it, you will live with clarity. So begin with small steps. Imagine saying no to just 3 things this week that do not serve your energy. Decline a social event that leaves you empty. Refuse a task you always say yes to out of guilt. Let a call go unanswered so you can stay in your flow. That space you reclaim will not just restore your energy, it will remind you of your power. In every no, there is a yes waiting for something better. A yes to focus, a yes to alignment, a yes to the life you actually want to live. This is where self-respect meets self-awareness. It takes strength to say no, but it takes even deeper worth to know that you deserve to. And when you act from that place, you no longer feel guilt for protecting your focus. You feel clarity. You feel freedom. You feel the quiet authority of someone who knows their mission matters. So let this be your reminder. Say yes when it is true, when it is right, when it aligns with your path. Everything else, say no, not later, but now. In that refusal, you will find the focus you've been searching for. And if this message struck something in you, let your way of saying yes today be simple. Subscribe for more reminders to protect what matters, and leave a single word, focus, in the comments to anchor it in your own mind. Because once you learn to say no with conviction, you unlock the freedom to say yes to what truly matters. And that leads us to the next truth. Your time does not belong to everyone who asks for it. 4. You don't owe time to all. Have you ever felt guilty for not answering a call, for not replying immediately to a message, or for turning down an invitation even when every part of you longed for rest? Many of us carry this quiet lie that kindness means being constantly available, that to be good is to be endlessly accessible. But when you live this way, you slowly discover that it doesn't lead to connection, it leads to exhaustion. Your time is not infinite, and yet the world will always behave as if it is theirs to take. Unless you protect it, you will watch your days dissolve into fragments of obligations you never truly chose. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca, in On the Shortness of Life, observed that people guard their money fiercely but give away their time without a second thought. He called it the most foolish form of generosity. Money lost can be earned again, but time once spent is gone forever. Each moment you give away without care is a piece of your life you will never recover. And yet, how many of us hand over our hours as if they were worthless, saying yes before pausing to ask if the request honors our values, our energy, or our deeper purpose? I once knew a young physician who struggled with this lesson. Everyone admired his generosity because he never refused anyone. Patients, colleagues, even distant acquaintances knew they could call him at any hour. At first, it seemed noble, a life of constant service. But slowly, he began to feel hollow. His own children saw less of him. His mind was always elsewhere, answering questions in his head while pretending to be present. One evening, his daughter asked, "Why are you always too tired for me?" That was the question that pierced him. He realized he had been giving his time to everyone but the ones who mattered most. In trying to be available to all, he had become absent to himself and to those he loved. His presence had turned into performance. This is the danger of believing you owe your time to everyone. What seems like kindness can become dishonesty. To give when your heart is empty is not generosity, it is a quiet betrayal of your own needs and of the authenticity of your relationships. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the value of life lies not in its length, but in its use. If your time is constantly scattered, your life becomes a blur of obligations that never once reflected your truest values. The alternative is not cruelty, but clarity. It is the calm ability to say, I am not available for that today, or I need this time for myself, without guilt, without apology. You do not have to justify to anyone why your time matters to you. Those who truly respect you will understand. Those who don't were never honoring your boundaries to begin with. Time is not just hours on a clock. It is attention, it is presence, it is the very shape of your existence. When you give it to what is hollow, you deplete yourself. When you give it to what is worthy, you expand. So ask yourself before you commit, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Because every yes costs you something. Perhaps it costs you the quiet you needed to think. Perhaps it costs you the focus required to finish your work. Perhaps it costs you the presence that belonged to your family or your closest friend. This week, try a simple practice. Before you answer any request, pause. Ask yourself, does this align with the person I am becoming? Does this serve the values I claim to live by? Or is it simply expectation disguised as duty? You will be surprised at how often the answer is no. And you will be even more surprised at how liberating it feels to honor that no with grace. You do not owe your time to everyone who asks for it, but you do owe it to yourself to live with intention. When you shift from guilt to clarity, from reflex to awareness, you begin to reclaim the rhythm of your days. And in that rhythm, your energy returns, your presence deepens, and your life begins to reflect what truly matters. And once you see time in this light, the next step becomes obvious. If you want to preserve this precious resource, you must also minimize the needless friction that quietly wastes it. 5. Minimize pointless friction. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot cure. It is not the weariness of effort, but of constant resistance. The exhaustion that comes from arguing over things that do not matter, from defending yourself to those who were never listening, from managing problems that should never have been yours to begin with. This hidden friction, small, daily, invisible to most, is what drains not only your energy, but also your clarity and your peace. Life already contains storms we cannot avoid. But how often do we add storms of our own making, simply because we cannot resist being pulled into noise? The Stoics warned against this trap. Epictetus once advised, if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. What he meant was simple. Stop wasting your energy proving yourself in places where it is not required. Stop believing that every challenge is yours to meet, every misunderstanding is yours to resolve, every debate is yours to win. Let others think what they will. Let them call you silent, indifferent, or even weak. What matters is not their perception, but your preservation. The truth is, most of the friction we fight is unnecessary. It steals time without giving anything of value in return. I once knew a man who spent half his life in arguments. Every dinner, every gathering, every online discussion became a battlefield where he had to win. Politics, religion, the smallest choices, nothing escaped his need to prove himself. For years he carried this fire until it burned him hollow. His family stopped listening. His friends withdrew. His nights were restless, his chest tight, his thoughts clouded. One day, in the silence of his own exhaustion, he realized he had not been defending truth. He had only been defending ego. And in the process, he'd lost peace, presence, and connection. That moment broke him open. Slowly, he began to practice restraint, letting opinions pass without reply, walking away from debates that offered no growth. Over time, something remarkable happened. His energy returned. His calm unsettled more people than his arguments ever did. And in choosing peace, he finally became strong. The modern world makes this harder than ever. We are told that silence means weakness, that disengagement means ignorance. We are trained to believe we must have an opinion on everything, respond instantly to every message, prove ourselves in every space. But the cost is written on our bodies, the tension that sits heavy in the chest, the fatigue that lingers even after sleep, the fog that dulls the morning before it begins. This is not simply burnout. It is the accumulation of battles that never deserved our attention, moments that should have been left alone but were fed with our reaction. The discipline is this: not everything requires your energy. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every provocation deserves a defense. Not every disagreement needs to be resolved. When your sense of self is secure, you do not need to prove it constantly. You simply live it. This is what the Stoics called ataraxia, inner stillness. It is not apathy. It is not withdrawal. It is discernment. It is knowing when to engage and when to walk away. Because every battle you choose has a cost, and your energy is too precious to be spent on noise. Try this simple practice. When something provokes you, pause. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Will my response create resolution or just more friction? Will this exchange build something, or will it only leave me drained? If the answer is no, walk away. Not as retreat, but as mastery. Because the greatest strength is often in refusing to fight battles unworthy of you. The more you practice, the more you'll notice that silence unsettles chaos more than rebuttals ever could. You'll find that people who thrive on conflict grow restless when you refuse to feed it, and most importantly, you'll feel your own peace returning. Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Much of our suffering is self-inflicted, born of fights we never needed to enter. Protecting your energy, then, is not only about boundaries, but about selectivity. It is the quiet wisdom of choosing peace over pride, presence over provocation. And when you do, you not only recover your clarity, you recover your life. This is the discipline of minimizing pointless friction, and once you taste the freedom it brings, you'll be ready for the next step, learning to guard the very inputs that shape your inner world. 6. Guard your mental inputs. Have you ever noticed how you can wake up calm, but within minutes of scrolling through the news or opening your phone, you feel tense, agitated, and restless? It is as if your peace was stolen before the day even began. This is not weakness. It is simply what happens when we forget that the mind is not a landfill. It was never designed to absorb every headline, every argument, every crisis, and every piece of noise the world throws at us. Just as your body weakens when you feed it with junk, your mind dulls when you allow clutter to stream in unchecked. Most people are not mentally exhausted because they have done too much, but because they have absorbed too much. The Stoics warned us against this long before the modern flood of information. Epictetus once said, "If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along." In today's world, this means giving your attention to every notification, every viral video, every debate that was never yours to enter. Imagine leaving your front door wide open so strangers could walk in and dump their garbage on your floor. Most of us would never allow it. And yet we allow strangers, marketers, and voices we don't even respect to pour noise into our minds every single day. I once knew a young artist who struggled with this more than he realized. He wanted to create something meaningful, but every morning he began by scrolling. A few minutes turned into an hour. By the time he sat at his desk, his head was buzzing with other people's ideas, other people's fears, other people's judgments. He hadn't yet touched his canvas, but already he was drained. His own voice was drowned before it had the chance to speak. It wasn't until he made a rule, no phone, no news, no noise before noon, that something changed. Slowly, his mornings became quiet again. Slowly, his art returned. What he guarded wasn't just his schedule, it was the gate of his mind. And behind that gate, his creativity was waiting. Mental input is subtle, which is why it is dangerous. It creeps in under the label of entertainment, staying informed or just checking. A scroll here, a headline there, a dramatic conversation you didn't need to enter. One by one, they fill your inner world until you begin to think thoughts that aren't truly yours. You start to carry fears that were never yours to bear. You get pulled off course not because you are weak, but because you forgot to guard the entrance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily not to let his mind become a puppet to other people's distractions. He knew that guarding thought was guarding life itself. So how do you protect your energy from this constant flood? Not with paranoia, but with discernment. Just as an athlete pays attention to what they eat, you must begin to pay attention to what you consume mentally. Ask yourself, what am I feeding my mind today? Is this content sharpening me or dulling me? Is this voice helping me see more clearly, or is it burying me in noise? Am I choosing this input, or is it choosing me? These are not abstract questions. They are practical shields against a culture addicted to reaction. Begin small. Audit your digital habits. Notice which accounts you follow that leave you drained or envious, and release them. Silence notifications that break your flow before you even know you've lost it. Replace endless streams of distraction with intentional moments of input. Read works that deepen you. Listen to voices that challenge you to grow, not just shout for your attention. Create silence, not as emptiness, but as space for your own thoughts to surface. Because your mind, like a clear pool, reflects best when it is undisturbed. Seneca once wrote that life is not short, but wasted. And one of the greatest wastes of our time is filling our days with noise that does not nourish. To guard your mental inputs is to stop wasting yourself on the trivial. It is not to escape reality, but to choose which reality you will engage with. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to carry the weight of every crisis the world throws onto your feed. What you need is space to think, to breathe, to remember who you are beneath it all. Consider this practice. Each evening, reflect not only on what you did, but on what you consumed. What stories did you let into your mind? What voices did you invite into your inner circle? Did they fuel your clarity, or did they scatter it? Over time, you'll begin to notice that your peace or your agitation has less to do with what happened to you and more to do with what you allowed in. This is the power of discernment, the quiet act of choosing your inputs with care. The world profits from your distraction. Entire industries are built on the hope that you will remain reactive, endlessly scrolling, endlessly consuming, endlessly comparing. But your task is to resist that pull, not by shutting out the world completely, but by curating it. By building a mental diet that sustains you, not drains you. Because clarity is not found in more, it is found in less. Less noise, less clutter, less unconscious consumption. And in that less, you recover something most people have forgotten how to access: inner stillness. And in that stillness, something powerful awakens. Your ability to respond instead of react. Your ability to lead your thoughts rather than be led by them. Your ability to live from intention, not distraction. Guarding your mental inputs is not about escaping life, it is about reclaiming it. It is about remembering that peace is not handed to you by the world, but cultivated within by what you allow to remain in your mind. When you learn this discipline, you stop handing your power away thought by thought, headline by headline, scroll by scroll. You realize that every time you choose silence over noise, depth over distraction, clarity over clutter, you are building strength. Strength the Stoics lived by, not loud, not showy, but steady, firm, unshakable. This is how you protect your energy in a world that feeds on it. And when you live this way, you find that your days no longer feel scattered. They begin to flow. And once you understand how to guard your mind, the next step becomes clear. Because protecting your inner world is not just about filtering out noise, it's also about learning how to align the life you are building with the energy you want to carry forward. When you look closely, you see that energy is not just fuel for life, it is life itself. Protect it, and everything begins to align. Let your calendar mirror your true values, not just endless obligations. Let your rest be sacred, your environment intentional, your work in rhythm with your nature, not dictated by clocks. Let the content you consume nourish your mind rather than enslave it. For when your energy is steady, you think with clarity, you act with wisdom, you respond instead of react. You draw better people toward you, you hold firmer boundaries, you move with a calm strength that needs no noise to prove itself. The Stoics reminded us that while we cannot command the world, we can command our inner world. Wherever your energy flows, your life grows. Do not wait for collapse to remind you what matters. Begin now with one clear no, one honest pause, one small boundary. In that choice, your fire returns, your presence deepens, and your days no longer slip away. Sometimes the most powerful act is walking away, not in anger, not in weakness, but in clarity. True strength is quiet, rooted in self-respect. As Seneca wrote, life is not short, but much of it is wasted clinging to what we have already outgrown. To let go of what no longer serves you is not defeat, it is wisdom. If this message resonated, take a moment to subscribe so you never forget to choose yourself first. Leave a simple word in the comments. Clarity. Let it be your anchor. And remember, the journey does not end here. The next step will take us deeper into how to build not just resilience, but unshakable inner strength. Stay ready.